The rain was falling in a way that felt almost deliberate, each drop slow, heavy, as if the sky itself mourned for something lost. I stood outside her apartment building, drenched to the bone, my heart pounding against my ribs harder than the thunder rolling above me. I had been here before. Same street, same broken feeling. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had called me, her voice trembling through the phone. And the word she said still echoed in my head. Can we talk? If you're watching this right now, you already know what that kind of call means. The one that pulls you back into the past you thought you'd left behind. But you also know sometimes love doesn't really end. It just pauses, waiting for courage to start again. If you're new here, take a second to like this video, drop a comment if you've ever waited for someone to come back, and subscribe to Kindness Universe for more heart-touching stories like this one. When I reached her door, I hesitated. The hallway smelled of rain and coffee, the familiar scent of late-night regret. I could hear the soft hum of her music, an old song I introduced her to years ago. Fix You, by Coldplay. The kind of song that made you believe broken things could still find their way home. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door opened. And there she was, Maya. Her dark hair was tied in a messy bun, her eyes swollen, like she'd been fighting herself for hours. She looked smaller than I remembered, as if the months apart had chipped away at the fire she once carried everywhere she went. But even then, one look at her, and the world around me disappeared. "He," she whispered. "Hey," I said, my voice barely audible. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was both a stranger and an old friend. Then she stepped aside. "You should come in. It's cold." I nodded, stepping into the warmth of her apartment. Everything looked almost the same beige couch, the same shelf full of her half-read books, the same candle I once bought her still sitting on the counter, half-burned. Except now there were boxes everywhere. Packed, taped, ready to go. I frowned. "You're leaving?" She nodded. "Yeah. Tomorrow morning." The air left my chest. I thought I was ready to see her again, but not like this. Not when she was already halfway out of this life. "Why'd you call me then?" I asked softly. She looked at me, tears forming in her eyes. "Because before I go, I needed to see you one last time. I needed to say the words I never did." We sat across from each other, the rain outside whispering against the glass like an old lullaby. She told me everything. How she'd spent the past 6 months trying to move on. How she took a new job in another city. How every night when she turned off the lights, her mind still found me in the dark. I listened. Every word cut deep, but I didn't interrupt, because part of me still believed that if I stayed quiet long enough, she'd say what I'd been dying to hear. And then, she did. "I thought if I left this place maybe I could stop missing you," she said, voice breaking. "But it's like you live in everything. The songs I play, the coffee I drink, the streets I walk. Even when I try to hate you, I can't." I swallowed hard. "Then why are you leaving?" She smiled sadly. "Because sometimes love isn't enough. We hurt each other too much." She wasn't wrong. We were two people who loved recklessly but couldn't figure out how to stay gentle while doing it. I remembered the fights, the slammed doors, the nights I slept on the couch because neither of us wanted to be the first to apologize. I remembered the day she walked out. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. But looking at her now, I realized something. It wasn't that love hadn't been enough. It was that we hadn't been enough for our love. Hours passed like minutes. We talked about everything, the good, the bad, the things we never said when we should have. When I finally stood to leave, the clock read 3:17 a.m. The city outside was asleep, but inside me everything was awake. As I turned toward the door, she called out softly, "Ethan." I stopped. When I looked back, she was standing there, her eyes glistening under the dim kitchen light. And then she said it, the sentence that would change everything. She looked at me and said, "Move in with you." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "What?" She took a step closer. "Don't make me say it again." My voice trembled. "Are you serious?" She nodded slowly. "I've been packing for weeks, thinking I was running away. But tonight, when you walked through that door, I realized maybe what I was running from was home. You were always my home." I stared at her, unable to speak. I'd spent months trying to move on, trying to tell myself that she was gone for good. But deep down, I knew I was waiting for this moment. waiting for her. I took a step forward, then another until I was standing inches from her. I reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "It's all I've been waiting for," I whispered. And for the first time in forever, we both smiled. Not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that finally lets go of it. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the room like a new beginning. Her boxes were still there, but they weren't leaving anymore. We unpacked them together, laughing through tears, rediscovering old memories with every item we pulled out. A photograph of us at the lake, a book I'd given her on her birthday, a coffee mug with a crack on the side, the one she refused to throw away because hoot still holds warmth. That day wasn't about promises, it was about forgiveness, the kind that doesn't erase the past but teaches you to love despite it. Weeks turned into months, and somehow we built something new. Not the wild, chaotic love we once had, but a quieter, more mature version of it. We learned to talk instead of shout, to listen instead of defend, to pause instead of walk away. One evening, as we sat on the balcony watching the city lights flicker, she rested her head on my shoulder and said, "Do you ever think about how close we were to never having this?" I smiled. "Every day." She closed her eyes. "Then promise me something. Anything. If one day we fight again, if one day I forget what this feels like, remind me of tonight." I kissed her forehead. "I will." But life, as it always does, tested that promise. A few months later, I lost my job. Suddenly, bills piled up, the air turned heavy again, and the silence we'd conquered started creeping back into our home. I could see her worrying, trying to hold us together the way she always did. But one night, I snapped, frustrated, tired, scared. Words came out that I didn't mean. She cried, I left. It felt like history was repeating itself. I drove around for hours, the streets blurring past in streaks of neon and regret. Every part of me screamed to turn back, but pride held me hostage. And then my phone buzzed. A message from her. Just one line. "Cho, don't forget tonight." That was all it took. I turned the car around and drove home. When I walked in, she was still awake, sitting on the couch. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. I just walked up, took her hand and whispered, "I'm sorry." She smiled through her tears. "You remembered." That night, we didn't fix everything, but we remembered why we wanted to. Love isn't always grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes, it's standing in the middle of your mess and choosing each other anyway. It's saying, move in. Not because it's convenient, but because your soul knows it's where it belongs. And every time I look at her now, cooking breakfast with her hair tied up and that same cracked mug in her hand, I realize I wasn't waiting for the right moment. I was waiting for her courage to match mine. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Subscribe to Kindness Universe for more stories that remind us, love isn't about finding perfection. It's about holding on when it's worth it. In the end, she didn't just say, move in with me. She said, let's build something worth staying for. And I said, it's all I've been waiting for. Because sometimes, the most beautiful part of love isn't how it begins. It's how it comes back when you thought it was gone forever.